She had 3 seconds to decide. Let the mafia boss marry the woman who planned to murder him, or kiss him in front of 200 armed criminals and destroy her own life. Her hand was already shaking when she stepped forward. Security reached for their guns. His fiancée's smile froze, and Nina did the one thing a waitress should never do. She put her lips on the most dangerous man in the city. The room erupted. Gasps cut through the air like knives. Conversations died mid-word. Crystal champagne flutes slipped from manicured fingers and exploded against the marble floor. Men who had built empires on violence instinctively shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons beneath their designer suits. Manchu Tuan did not move. He stood perfectly still, commanding and composed in his tailored charcoal suit, the dragon tattoo at his neck barely visible above his collar. The most dangerous man in the room, and suddenly the center of it. The kiss lasted no more than 3 seconds. But in those seconds, Nina felt the full weight of what she had done crash into her chest like a bullet. She was going to die. She knew it with bone-deep certainty. As she pulled away, her lips barely leaving his, she pressed something into his palm. Her phone warm, recording still active. Her mouth brushed his ear, her voice low and urgent, trembling despite every effort to stay steady. Watch it. Don't react. Hands seized her immediately. Security yanked her backwards so hard she stumbled, nearly losing her balance. Someone shouted. Someone else cursed in Mandarin. Chairs scraped violently as men stood, bodies tense, eyes sharp, ready for blood. What is the meaning of this? The fiancée, Yuna, screamed, her voice cracking as humiliation and rage twisted her perfect features. Get her away from him. Nina didn't struggle. Her heart was pounding so violently she could barely breathe, but her eyes stayed locked on Manchu Tuan's face. She needed to see something, anything, that told her she hadn't just thrown her life away for nothing. For a brief moment, his expression was unreadable. Dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin burn. Then his fingers closed around the phone. It was a small movement, barely noticeable in the chaos, but it changed everything. Enough. His voice was calm, controlled, deadly. The room fell silent. Let her go. The guards hesitated. Sir, one of them began, his grip still iron-tight on Nina's arm. She assaulted you. Manchu Tuan turned his head slightly. His gaze cut through the man like a blade, cold and absolute. I said, he repeated quietly, each word deliberate. Let her go. They released her immediately. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. Whisper started, low and dangerous. The fiancée stared at him, disbelief written across her flawless face. Manchu Tuan, are you serious right now? Yuna's voice was shrill, desperate. She just humiliated me in front of everyone, in front of your entire organization. But Manchu Tuan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at Nina, at the waitress in the borrowed uniform who had just risked everything to save his life, at the woman trembling in the center of a ballroom filled with killers, her chin lifted despite the terror in her eyes. And slowly, deliberately, he raised her phone to his ear and pressed play. What he heard in the next 10 seconds would shatter his world and bind him to Nina forever. 30 minutes earlier, Nina had been invisible, just another server in black and white, refilling champagne glasses and clearing plates while the city's most powerful criminals celebrated an engagement that would reshape the underground empire. She perfected the art of being unseen, eyes down movements efficient, existing in the spaces between conversations where secrets lived. That's how she'd heard it. Behind the velvet curtain near the service entrance, Yuna's voice had been silk over steel. The fiancée stood with her back to Nina, phone pressed to her ear, completely unaware of the waitress frozen 3 feet away with a tray of empty glasses. Midnight. The toast. Poison in his glass. The one with the gold rim. I'll make sure he takes it. A pause. Then colder. Once he's dead, we divide the territory as discussed. The empire becomes ours. Nina's hands had started shaking then. They hadn't stopped. Now, walking across that ballroom floor felt like crossing a minefield. Every step brought her closer to a man who could kill her with a word. Every eye in the room tracked her movement, confused, suspicious, dangerous. Manchu Tuan. Her voice climbed higher, desperate now. What is that? What did she give you? He didn't answer. He simply looked at his fiancée, the woman he'd been about to marry, the woman who'd just signed his death warrant, and smiled. It was the coldest smile Nina had ever seen. The Mafia Boss asked his security men in suite to take Nina into the interrogation room to ask her some few questions and to find out the truth from her about the accusation she labeled against his fiancée. The room was smaller than Nina expected. No windows. One door. A single light fixture casting harsh shadows across walls that had probably witnessed confessions extracted through methods she didn't want to imagine. The guards had deposited her in a leather chair and disappeared, the lock clicking behind them with terrible finality. She was alone with Manchu Tuan. He stood across from her, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing more ink. Dragons and characters she couldn't read winding up his forearms. He held her phone between two fingers like it was evidence at a trial, which she supposed it was. "Play it again," he said quietly. He'd already listened 3 times. Each time his expression had grown colder, more controlled. Now he set the phone on the desk between them and pressed play once more. Yuna's voice filled the silence. Confident. Calculating. Midnight. The toast. Poison in his glass. The one with the gold rim. "I'll make sure he takes it. Once he's dead, we divide the territory as discussed." The recording continued names of rival families, details of the power-sharing agreement, the timeline for dismantling his organization piece by piece. When it ended, the silence felt heavier than before. Manchu Tuan's eyes found hers. Why? Nina's throat was dry. Why what? Why risk your life for a stranger? He moved closer, perching on the edge of the desk, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You could have walked away, finished your shift, gone home. Instead, you kissed me in front of 200 armed men, any one of whom would have killed you without hesitation. His head tilted slightly. "So I'll ask again. Why?" Nina's hands twisted in her lap. The truth felt dangerous, but lies felt impossible under that gaze. "Because staying silent would have made me complicit," she said finally. "And I spent too long being invisible. Too long letting things happen around me without doing anything." Her voice dropped. "I couldn't watch someone die when I had the power to stop it, even if that someone was you." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite softness, but something close to respect. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both." Almost a smile. "Then what's your name?" "Nina Chen." "And what does Nina Chen do when she's not kissing mafia bosses at engagement parties?" "I wait tables, work 3 jobs, take care of my brother." The words came easier now. "Try to stay alive. Try to stay alive," he repeated slowly, catching something in her tone. "That's an interesting choice of words." Nina's breath hitched. She hadn't meant to say it like that. "There's someone," she said quietly, hating how small her voice sounded. "My ex-Kai. He won't leave me alone. 8 months now. Follows me. Shows up at my apartment. Sends messages." Her hands trembled. "I can't make him stop." Manchu Tuan's eyes darkened, and Nina realized with a jolt that the expression on his face was anger, but not at her. "Let me make you an offer," he said, leaning forward. "Your testimony against my enemies. Full cooperation with what's coming next." He paused. "In exchange, you get my protection. Complete. Unconditional. Nothing and no one touches you. Not Yuna's allies. Not your ex. Not anyone." Nina stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved my life tonight." His voice was quiet, absolute. "And I pay my debts." The penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom spread at their feet. Nina stood in the living room, all marble and leather and art that probably cost more than her entire apartment building, and tried to process how her life had imploded in less than 12 hours. Leo sat on the green-colored sofa, 15 years old and trying desperately not to look impressed. He'd asked 3 questions when Manchu Tuan's men had shown up at their apartment at dawn. "Is Nina okay? Are we in trouble? Can I bring my laptop?" Now he watched everything with a careful wariness of someone who'd learned early that good things didn't last. "The security detail rotates every 8 hours, Manchu Tuan said, appearing in the doorway with 2 phones and a tablet. He'd changed into a black shirt, sleeves still rolled up, looking somehow more dangerous in casual clothes than he had in the tailored suit. No one gets past the lobby without my authorization. The windows are bulletproof. Panic buttons in every room. Nina turned from the view. What happened to Una? His expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. She's no longer your concern. Or mine. She has 24 hours to leave the city. If she's still here at midnight tomorrow, she won't leave at all. And the families she was working with? That's more complicated. He set the devices on the glass coffee table and poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter. The Chin family. The Volkov Syndicate. 3 smaller organizations I'd been negotiating with. They're not happy their plan failed, and they're not happy I know about it. He took a drink. They'll regroup, look for leverage, try to destabilize what's left of my alliances. Leverage, Nina repeated slowly, understanding dawning. Like me? Like you, he confirmed. Which is why you don't leave this building without me or my security. Why your brother doesn't go back to his school until I've vetted every teacher, student, and janitor. Why for the foreseeable future. Your life is not your own. The words should have terrified her. Instead, Nina felt a strange sense of relief. At least this cage had rules. At least this danger was one she could see coming. How long, she asked. Until the threat is neutralized. He studied her over the rim of his glass. Could be weeks. Could be months. I don't deal in uncertain timelines. Leo finally spoke up, voice cracking slightly. So we're basically prisoners. You're protected, Manchu Tuan corrected. But not unkindly. There's a difference. Is there? Nina challenged, surprising herself. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and something darker. Gunpowder, maybe. Or just danger itself. The difference is that prisoners want to leave. You want to survive. His eyes held hers. And now you have someone willing to kill for that survival. So, yes, Nina Chen, there's a difference. She traded invisibility for a spotlight. Freedom for safety. One kind of danger for another. But as she watched Manchu Tuan's security team do another sweep of the perimeter, as Leo explored the bedroom that was bigger than their entire apartment, as the city glittered below like a promise or a threat, Nina realized something crucial. This time, she wasn't facing the danger alone. The lawyer's office was sterile and efficient, decorated in shades of gray that matched the rain streaking down the windows. Nina sat across from a man in wire-rimmed glasses who looked like he'd facilitated far worse transactions than a marriage contract and had long stopped asking questions. Manchu Tuan slid the document across the mahogany desk. 20 pages, single-spaced, legal terminology that might as well have been a foreign language. 6 months, he said, his tone identical to the one he'd probably used negotiating arms deals. Renewable if circumstances require. But the initial term ends automatically unless both parties agree to extend. Nina scanned the pages, catching phrases like strategic alliance and mutual protection arrangement and dissolution of agreement. Nowhere did it mention love. Nowhere did it mention anything remotely resembling an actual marriage. What does this actually accomplish? She asked, looking up. In the old codes, the rules that still govern most of the families, a man's wife is untouchable, an extension of his power and protection. Harming her is the same as declaring war on him directly. He leaned back in his chair, watching her process this. Right now, you're under my protection, but you're still viewed as an outsider, a liability, someone who could be taken, used as leverage, turned against me. As my wife, you become part of my household, my family, legally and symbolically untouchable. So this is about property, Nina said flatly. This is about keeping you alive. His voice was sharp. The families who conspired with Yuna are looking for weaknesses. Any opening to destabilize my organization. You are that opening, unless I close it. The lawyer cleared his throat diplomatically. If I may, the contract includes standard provisions for housing, security, financial support. And Leo, Nina interrupted, her eyes still on Manchu Tuan. You protect him too. Not just while we're married, after. Whatever happens, he stays safe. Something flickered across Manchu Tuan's face, approval maybe, or respect. Already included. Page 14, Clause 7. She found it. Read it twice. Her brother's name in black and white. Guaranteed protection regardless of the contract status. One more thing, she said. I need to be able to work. Not waitressing, obviously, but something. I can't just exist in that penthouse. Page 9. You'll manage the charitable foundation my organization runs. Legitimate work. Real salary. He paused. You'll be good at it. Nina picked up the pen the lawyer offered. It was heavy, expensive, probably worth more than she'd made in a month. The irony wasn't lost on her. Their relationship had started with a desperate kiss in front of 200 witnesses, passion and danger, and split-second decisions. Now, they were getting married with all the romance of a corporate merger. She signed her name. Manchu Tuan signed his. The lawyer witnessed both signatures with practiced efficiency. Congratulations, the lawyer said, sounding like he was announcing a stock acquisition. You're now legally married. Manchu Tuan extended his hand across the desk, not to hold hers, but to shake it. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Tuan. Nina shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the strength in his grip, and thought about how strange it was that this cold transaction might be the thing that kept her alive. Their marriage was a weapon, and they both just learned how to wield it. The dress was red silk that moved like water, custom fitted to her body by a designer whose name Nina couldn't pronounce. Diamonds borrowed from Manchu Tuan's vault glittered at her throat and wrists. Real ones, the kind with insurance policies and arm guards. Her hair had been styled by professionals who'd worked in reverent silence, transforming the waitress into something that belonged on his arm. Nina barely recognized herself in the mirror. You look terrified, Manchu Tuan said from the doorway of her bedroom. He wore a black tuxedo that probably cost more than a car, his hair perfectly styled, the dragon tattoo just visible above his collar. He looked like exactly what he was, power-wrapped in expensive fabric. I am terrified, Nina admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He crossed her, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist with surprising gentleness. But don't let them see it. Tonight, you're not Nina Chin the waitress. You're Mrs. Tuan, my wife. That means you're untouchable. Or a target. His eyes met hers in the mirror. Both. Always both. The gala was held at the Grand Regency, the same hotel where she'd served drinks at countless events just weeks ago. Now she walked through the entrance on Manchu Tuan's arm, feeling the weight of every gaze that turned their direction. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, politicians, business magnates, and underneath the veneer of respectability, the families that actually ran everything. Conversations paused as they entered. Cameras flashed. Nina felt exposed under the chandeliers, like prey in an open field. Smile. Manchu Tuan murmured against her ear. Let them wonder. So she smiled, accepted champagne she didn't drink, listened to introductions she'd forget immediately, stood beside her husband. God, that word still felt foreign, as he navigated conversations that were equal parts business negotiation and psychological warfare. She was doing fine until Viktor Volkov approached. He was older, silver-haired, with a kind of smile that never reached his eyes. One of the families that had conspired with Yuna. Nina recognized his voice from the recording. Cold, calculating, discussing territory divisions, like cutting up a map. Manchu Tuan, Victor said smoothly, extending his hand. And this must be your lovely bride. Such surprising development. Surprising. Manchu Tuan agreed, not taking the bait. Victor's eyes slid to Nina, assessing. I hope you know what you've gotten yourself into, my dear. This world can be so dangerous for the uninitiated. So many ways for delicate things to break. The threat was barely veiled. Nina felt ice slide down her spine. Then Manchu Tuan's hand found hers. His fingers interlaced with hers, warm and solid and absolutely certain. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that made the nearby conversations die. My wife is under my protection, Victor. You understand what that means, don't you? He smiled, and it was the coldest thing Nina had ever seen. Anything that breaks against me first. And I don't break easily. Victor's smile tightened. Of course. I meant no offense. Yes, Manchu Tuan said softly. You did. The older man retreated, and Nina realized her hand was shaking in Manchu Tuan's grip. Breathe, he told her. She did, and understood completely now. She was both armor and target, protected and endangered by the same hand. But at least that hand was holding hers. Nina found him in his study at 2 a.m, surrounded by books that had nothing to do with criminal empires, philosophy, poetry, a worn copy of Marcus Aurelius with notes in the margins written in his precise handwriting. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. She'd been having nightmares. Kai's face, Yuna's voice, the sound of guns being drawn. "The penthouse is too quiet. Sit." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. So she did. And somehow, in the lamplight and silence, it became easier to talk. She told him about her parents, the car accident when she was 19, the sudden weight of raising a teenage brother alone, the nursing school acceptance letter she'd never answered, the dream she'd folded up and put away because survival didn't leave room for wanting more. He listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I was 12 when my father died," he said finally. "Shot in the street outside our restaurant. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong debt." His fingers traced the rim of his whiskey glass. "I swore I'd never be powerless like that again. Never be the one bleeding on the pavement while people walked past." "Is that why you never sleep past dawn?" His eyes lifted to hers, surprised. "You noticed?" "I notice a lot of things about you now." Something shifted in the air between them. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or protection arrangements. 3 days later, someone tried to kill him. It happened fast, a car ramming theirs on the way back from a meeting, gunfire. Manchu Tuan security returning fire while he shoved Nina to the floor. When it was over, he had a bullet graze along his ribs and refused to go to a hospital. Back at the penthouse, Nina found the first aid kit and made him sit still while she cleaned the wound. Her hands were steadier than they should have been, muscle memory from patching up Leo's skateboard accidents and her own kitchen burns. "You're good at this," Manchu Tuan said, watching her work. "I'm good at a lot of things I never wanted to learn." The rain started then, drumming against the windows like bullets. Nina finished bandaging his ribs, her fingers lingering perhaps a moment too long against his skin. She could feel his breathing, see the scars that mapped his history. Knife wounds, burns, the kind of damage that came from building an empire with bloody hands. When she looked up, his face was inches from hers. "Nina," he said quietly. "Don't." Her voice cracked. "Don't make this more complicated than it already is." Too late. His hand came up, cupping her face with a tenderness that contradicted everything she knew about him. "It's been too late since you kissed me in that ballroom." He pressed his lips to her forehead, not a kiss of passion, but something deeper, something that felt like gratitude and promise and apology all at once. "Thank you," he whispered against her skin. "For that night. For this. For not running when anyone with sense would have." Nina closed her eyes, breathing him in expensive cologne and gunpowder and something uniquely him. The contract between them specified 6 months. Strategic alliance. Mutual protection. But this moment felt nothing like strategy. It felt terrifyingly real. The call came at 3:15 in the afternoon. Nina was reviewing grant applications for the foundation when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Nina." Kai's voice was exactly as she remembered, smooth, possessive, with an edge that promised violence. "Miss me?" Her blood turned to ice. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways, just like I have your brother." The world tilted. "What?" "Leo's fine. For now. Picked him up after school. He fought a little. Kid's got spirit. But he'll behave as long as he thinks you're coming for him." Nina was already standing, her chair clattering backwards. Manchu Tuan security noticed immediately, hands moving toward weapons. She shook her head frantically, putting the call on speaker. "What do you want?" Her voice was surprisingly steady. "You know what I want. You. Us. The way it was before you decided you were too good for me." His tone hardened. "Walk away from your mafia husband. Come back where you belong. Do it and Leo goes home safe. Refuse and I start sending you pieces of him." "Kai, please. You have 2 hours. Come alone to the old cannery on Pier 17. Tell your husband and the boy dies. Bring security and the boy dies. This is between us, Nina. It always has been." The line went dead. Nina stood frozen, the phone still in her hand, her entire world collapsing. Leo, her baby brother. the only family she had left, in the hands of a man who'd once broken her ribs for talking to a male coworker. Manchu Tuan appeared in the doorway. He must have been monitoring her office. Of course he was. Tell me. She did. Every word. When she finished, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. I have to go, she said. I have to. No. His voice was absolute. He'll kill Leo. He'll kill you both. Manchu Tuan crossed her, gripping her shoulders. This isn't about getting you back. This is about punishing you for leaving. The moment you show up, you're both dead. Tears burned her eyes. Then what do I do? He's my brother. He's 15. Her voice broke. I can't lose him. I can't. You won't. Manchu Tuan's hands moved to frame her face, forcing her to look at him. You trusted me once with a phone and a kiss, with evidence that could have gotten you killed, with your life. His eyes held hers, dark and certain. Trust me now with your brother's life. How can you? Because I have 40 men, a decade of experience, and every resource in this city at my disposal. And because he stopped something vulnerable flashing across his face. Because you're my wife, and he's your family, which makes it mine to protect. Nina stared at him, seeing past the mafia boss, past the violence and power, to the man who read philosophy at 2 a.m. and never slept past dawn, the man who'd held her in the rain and whispered thank you like a prayer. She didn't just need his protection anymore. She loved him. Bring him home, she whispered. I will. He kissed her forehead, quick and fierce. I promise. Manchu Tuan's war room was exactly that, maps spread across tables, phones buzzing with intel, men checking weapons with practiced efficiency. Nina watched from the doorway as he coordinated the operation with surgical precision. Thermal imaging shows 12 heat signatures. Kai's in the center, second floor. Leo's in the basement, northeast corner. His finger traced the factory layout. We go in 3 teams. Extraction, engagement, and backup. And if he's booby-trapped the building, one of his lieutenants asked. Then we adapt. Manchu Tuan's voice was cold. But we don't leave without the boy. Nina waited until he'd finished briefing his team, until the men had filed out to their vehicles. Then she approached. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He's my brother. Which is why you're staying here where it's safe. He was already moving toward the door, checking his gun with mechanical efficiency. I'll bring him back, Nina. I promised. She grabbed his arm. I've spent my whole life hiding, staying invisible, letting other people fight my battles. Her grip tightened. Not this time. Not when it's Leo. Something in her voice made him stop. He turned, studying her face, and she saw the exact moment he understood. This wasn't about trust or protection anymore. This was about her refusing to be powerless ever again. Stay behind me, he said finally. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? She nodded, relief and terror flooding through her in equal measure. The factory was a skeleton of rust and broken windows on the city's outskirts. Manchu Tuan's team moved through it like shadows, silent and deadly. Nina stayed close, her heart hammering against her ribs as gunfire suddenly erupted above them. Kai had been waiting. The fight was brutal. Muzzle flashes in the darkness, men shouting, the metallic smell of blood and gunpowder. Manchu Tuan moved through it like he was born for violence, every shot precise, every movement calculated. His men were disciplined, professional, cutting through Kai's hired fighters with ruthless efficiency. Nina used the chaos to slip away. The basement stairs were narrow and dark. She found Leo in a storage room, hands zip-tied, a bruise blooming across his cheek. His eyes widened when he saw her. Nina! She was already cutting through the ties with a knife she'd taken from Manchu Tuan's arsenal. Can you walk? Yeah, but... Then we move. Now. They made it halfway up the stairs before Kai appeared at the top. He looked worse than she remembered, thinner, wild-eyed, with the desperate energy of someone who'd already lost everything and had nothing left to lose. He held a gun, pointed directly at her chest. I told you to come alone, he said quietly. And I told you no. Nina pushed Leo behind her, even as her legs threatened to give out. It's over, Kai. Let us go. Over? He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. It's over when I say it's over. You're mine, Nina. You've always been. The shot came from behind Nina. Kai jerked backwards, the gun clattering from his hand. He looked down at the blood spreading across his chest with something like surprise. Manchu Tuan emerged from the shadows below, gun still raised, eyes flat and merciless. "No," he said quietly, climbing the stairs. "She's mine." He fired again. Kai crumpled. The threat that had haunted Nina for 8 months ended in a basement stairwell, erased like smoke and wind. Manchu Tuan lowered his weapon and looked at Nina, at Leo pressed against her side, at the tears streaming down her face. "Let's go home," he said. And for the first time in years, Nina knew exactly where home was. 3 days after the factory, Nina found Manchu Tuan in his study at dawn. He hadn't slept. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. The safe behind his desk stood open. He held their marriage contract in his hands. "I've been thinking," he said, without preamble, "about what comes next." Nina's stomach dropped. The contract had 3 months left. She'd known this moment would come eventually. The renegotiation, the discussion of terms, the clinical dissection of what their marriage meant strategically. "Okay," she managed. He looked at the document for a long moment. Then, deliberately, he tore it in half. Nina stared. "What are you?" "I'm done with contracts." He tore it again and again until their marriage existed only as confetti in his hands. "Done pretending this is strategy. Done treating you like a chess piece I'm protecting on a board." "I don't understand." "I'm dismantling it, Nina. The violent parts, the territories that require bloodshed to maintain. The alliance is built on fear." He moved toward her, and she saw something in his face she'd never seen before: uncertainty, vulnerability. "I've spent 15 years building an empire on violence, and in one night you showed me there might be another way to live." "Manchu Tuan, I'm keeping the legitimate businesses, the real estate holdings, the investments, everything I can operate without having to kill someone every other week." His hands found hers, still stained with paper dust from the shredded contract. "But I can't do this. Can't be the man who deserves you, if I'm still that person. The one who solves problems with bullets." Tears burned Nina's eyes. "You saved my brother's life. And I'd do it again. I'd burn the world for you and Leo. But I want to build something too. Something real. Something that isn't forced by circumstance or sealed with contracts." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the tears that had started to fall. "I want to choose you, Nina. Not because you saved my life. Not because you need protection. But because somewhere between that kiss and this moment, I fell in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Raw, honest, terrifying. "The contract said 6 months, Nina whispered. "I don't want 6 months. I want the rest of my life." His forehead touched hers. "But only if you want to. Only if you choose this. Choose me. Not the empire or the power or the protection. Just me." Nina thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, invisible, hiding, convinced that safety meant staying small. She thought about the waitress who'd kissed a mafia boss to save a stranger's life, not knowing that kiss would save her own. She wasn't that woman anymore. "I choose you," she said against his lips. "Not the empire. Not the contract. You." This kiss was different from the first one, that had been desperate, strategic, a warning delivered in the only way she knew how. This was a promise, a beginning, the conscious choice to build something honest from the ashes of everything they'd survived. When they finally pulled apart, dawn was breaking over the city. The same view, but everything had changed. "So what now?" Nina asked. Manchu Tuan smiled, real and genuine and free. "Now we figure out how to be normal people. Or at least try. I don't think we'll ever be normal. Probably not." He pulled her closer. "But we can be honest. We can be real. We can build something that isn't about survival, but about actually living." Nina looked out at the city below, thinking about invisible waitresses and criminal empires and the strange, impossible journey that had brought her here. To this man, to this moment, to a life she'd never imagined choosing. "Then let's live," she said. And they did. Not perfectly. Not without scars from the world they'd left behind. But honestly, freely. Building their future one choice at a time. No contracts required. Just two people who'd learned that the bravest thing you can do is choose to love someone and let them choose you back. The story illustrates that acts of courage and compassion often return to us in unexpected ways. By stepping into the light to help someone else, we often find our own path forward. Manchu Tuan had built an empire on control, controlling territory, people, outcomes. But he discovers that the most powerful thing he can do is choose to love Nina freely, without contracts or conditions. Real power isn't about dominance. It's about the courage to be genuine and vulnerable with another person. This story ultimately teaches that living authentically, standing up for what's right, choosing love over fear, building something honest rather than hiding in shadows, is harder and more dangerous than staying invisible. But it's the only way to truly live. Safety, love, and meaning don't come from contracts, hiding, or control. They come from the brave choice to be seen, to act with integrity, and to build your life on truth rather than survival. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notification bell so you would never miss a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Did Nina and Manchu Tuan's journey touch your heart? What would you have done in Nina's position? Your comments and support fuel these stories and help me bring you more content like this. Share this with someone who loves a good romance with danger, redemption, and real emotion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose love, even when it's terrifying. Goodbye for now.